This week's Chainsaw Man Tuesday was one for the history books, friends. Asamitaka has finally done it and has overcome Yoru to not only possibly get back her autonomy over her, but also make true on her promise of saving Denji. So let's break down chapter 206 and why this is one of the biggest moments for Asa's character thus far. I challenge you to get this video to 500 likes and 25 new subscribers. Can we do it? So the beginning of this chapter is quite funny because when faced with the falling devil, the only thing Denji can even focus on initially is her ginormous chest, which, as a reminder, are her arms. Her chest is actually way smaller than that, but the mere sight of the possibility of gigantic breasts has Denji pretty much regressed to that of an ape, just like losing his mind over those massive memories. So Yoru, actually acting like a voice of reason for once, yells at Denji to make him snap out of his boob trance and get into the right headspace. Because after all, this is the Falling Devil, a primal fear and one of the strongest devils we've ever seen in the series. So with that in mind, Yoru tells Denji his best bet is to free her first, which Falling welcomes him to do. After all, her goal is to plunge humanity into an abyss of terror. She has no issues with Denji or even Yoru. And so seeing the buildings crumble as it endangers everyone in the area, Denji lunges forward and attacks Falling, aiming for the head. But that is the exact last thing Denji should have done at this moment. Falling's power is just so absurdly overpowered. She then activates her abilities and causes Denji to fall with some very interesting verbiage being used. She says that Denji has not changed at all since the last encounter, which backs up what we have all been seeing over the last few arcs. Denji is still falling for the same old tricks of a toxic woman coming into his life as he just willingly falls for it. I mean, he even told Pochita that he knows what he is doing by getting involved with Yoru and fully expects to be hurt, abused, and whatever else by her, but does not care. This shows that Denji's trauma indeed has kept him from moving on and has kept his growth stagnant and static. Denji simply can't move past the traumas of losing power and Aki, killing Makima and eating her, losing Nayata, and with the countless women who have contributed to his mental state. Just like any of us, trauma keeps us from growing, as it's sort of like a baggage. The more you have of it, it weighs you down more. But you keep it with you because it is your baggage. These are the things that define you as a person, just like baggage in the real world. You put the stuff in the baggage, you take it with you to other places, because what has happened to Denji is he is simply carrying way too much of it to do anything meaningful in life. There is no progress, or almost next to none, because he is being crushed under the weight of his past. This is why Falling says what she says, and it is also why Falling is not frightened by his chainsaws. And think about that for a moment. Has there ever been anyone in Chainsaw Man who has ever just simply disregarded Chainsaw Man and his powers like altogether, not even seeing them as a threat? To some degree, every single person in Devil has either feared them, believed they could manipulate them like a puppet or destroy them or whatever, but none have ever been as indifferent as Falling is toward Chainsaw Man at this moment. This has to be a first, or at least something that very rarely happens. However, this line is also important because it may also be the key to Denji defeating Falling, or at least getting out of this predicament. Because if Denji can make Falling fear him, he may have a chance. How he does that is really anyone's guess, but my theory is that Denji could confront his past with the help of Asa being his emotional support and pillar to regain his confidence once more and face his trauma with someone. This could lead to something in which Denji takes full ownership of what happened and overcomes Falling's power, which would reverse the effects of her ability, and from there, who knows how Falling would react, right? So we see the man Denji slaughtered crawl out of Falling's mouth, and I am sure people really enjoyed seeing her tongue there. I'm definitely not projecting. Denji is confronted by the man who reminds him that he knows the pain of losing loved ones. This is referencing people like Power, Aki, Miyawi, Nayuta, and Rize, who were all integral figures that in one way or another, Denji tragically lost due to the circumstances of his situation as Chainsaw Man. But all of these people were people he loved and cared about deeply, and so losing all these people is what led Denji to go to the brothel. It what led him to beg Yoru to literally cut his dick off, which only led to even more trauma and more and more and more and more. But despite Denji experiencing all of this pain, he is being criticized for going ahead and killing people anyways. And this is the crux, that little kernel of truth that keeps Denji awake at night. What if? Now, he is the one who is taking away people they care and love. He is the person taking away someone else's Rize, or someone else's power, someone else's Aki, Nayuta, or Miaoi. And hearing this, seeing this nightmare unfold as his darkest moments come back to haunt him and remind him, we see him turn into a child again. Because, as a child in that form, this is a representation of where this all started. With his father, with Katana's grandfather. And, fun fact, if you remember, Katana's introduction is him telling Denji that he killed someone who was a good Yakuza that helped his community the best he could despite how awful he was. And that seems ridiculous, because it is ridiculous. There is really no redeeming someone like that man. But what Katana said, taken at face value, kinda can't be understated. To Katana, he was the man who inspired him and countless others, while Katana turned out to be who Katana is. I mean, the guy is an awesome Mitaka mega fanatic. The only other people I can think of that are even like that is 99% of Bento viewers. But don't lie to me! Point being, we may not see it, but people derive different meanings based on perception. If they knew reality, things would be much different, but reality is also based on perception too. What does that mean? Well, Denji has to confront the feelings of other people, and he really can't back out of it this time. So what does Denji do? He falls upwards as he begs for forgiveness from the visions induced by the nightmare abilities of the Falling Devil. But in one of the best moments of all time in the history of recorded human history, seeing the very same thing happen to Denji, Asa Mitaka, great, fun, awesome thing to say, takes over and does something that Yoru is not willing to do. Put herself directly into harm's way to make do on her promise. What is that promise, ladies and gentlemen? Of course, save the Denji. This moment is just so perfect. It shows that Yoru is cowardly compared to Asa Mitaka, who is more than willing to sacrifice herself to save someone else. Yoru wouldn't do this. She would more than willingly allow Denji to suffer his fate alone, rather than risk blowing up the building, which could blow her up in the process too. Yoru chose her own self-preservation as a devil, and Asa chose her humanity. This makes a ton of sense, and is something I've been saying for a while now. Asa Mitaka has been set up as a character that isn't some coward, even though a lot of people say she is and that she's this or that horrible character, blah, blah, blah. In reality, Asa has shown so many times that she would give up her college funds, her autonomy, and even her own life if it meant that whatever Yoru had planned could be stopped. And why she doesn't want what she has planned to happen is, I guarantee you, because it would harm Denji. So if Denji killed her then, if Denji would have let her die, then Yoru would be stopped and Denji would be saved and she would succeed in her goal. But that didn't happen, and I'm so glad it didn't, because if she died at any point before then, it probably would be game over for Denji. Because Asa can't die, as her entire porpoise is to protect him, and so that is exactly what she does by leaping into the air against Yoru's wishes to repeat the history again by saving Denji from falling any further. A reverse of what we saw in the Falling Devil arc's climax. Because Asa Mitaka, my friends, is about to remind Denji why his past shouldn't define his future. She is going to remind him about his promise to Nayuta, his promise to power, to Aki, to all of the people who left or hurt him or were killed. This is the moment we have all been waiting for. Asa is about to remind Denji why he chooses to live on despite the pain. because he wants to have sex. And I guarantee you Asa will absolutely be the one to promise it to him. Probably, maybe, we'll see. But despite that, there is another aspect to this. I also think that Asa is going to see everything Denji has gone through. I think she will literally see what Denji sees and ask him to shoulder these burdens with her together. She will see what happened to Himino, Rize, Aki Power, all of them, and will fully understand how far Denji has come and what he was forced to sacrifice and how he came out this way. This will give Asa a clear path in how to save and protect him much clearer, giving her the confidence to confront these things with him, as she is there just to be there unconditionally. And that is the one thing we've never seen happen with Denji. The closest was Nayuta, but Asa has the chance to be the first in his life to do something not even Nayuta could do. A woman who doesn't want his heart. Quite poetic, isn't it? So, how bad was my reading comprehension this week? Let me know what you thought about Chapter 206 and where Denji and especially Asa's character is headed. I'll see you guys on July 1st for Chapter 207. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.